Hi, guys. Welcome back. Today, we're going to meet a YouTuber named William Singleton. Poor counseling strategies. Well, his name is William Singleton. The name of his video is My Story, Fat, Broke, and Lonely. I hope you enjoy.
To do a video on my story, and it really kind of put me in my head, because the story isn't over. It's unfolding as we speak. It's a comedy, a tragedy, an adventure. But here we go. That's me in the back, smiling. I was always smiling. I use my smile and my humor as a mask to cover up all the crap I was feeling on the inside. I smiled so much that I fooled people. They never knew that I always felt fat, broke, and lonely on the inside, feeling like the stupid, goofy comedian instead of who I really was. So I just wanted to stop the slideshow after that last photo. I struggled with even finding a picture of me during the really darkest part of my past. And I was so good at hiding and camouflaging everything. I couldn't find anything. It often was the problem that I talk to my clients about today, is where we wear a mask underneath a mask. I would try to hide who I was from the world, afraid they were going to find out I was an imposter. But what was really happening is I was wearing another mask underneath that because I was hiding from myself. Even to this day, I still struggle with completely removing that second mask to reveal who I really am and the potential I have. So I just wanted to pause right there and just talk about that, because
Yeah, thanks, William. Let's pause right there and let's talk about that. Sometimes what happens is, as we're young, we're really enjoying life, and then all of a sudden we start to experience what life really is, the stresses of having to make enough money and make ends meet, the stresses of starting to gain that freshman 15 and then more and more weight. And then before you know it, you're in a situation where you no longer really feel your best. And those are tough times. If you know firsthand what William's going through, let me know down in the comments.
behind that smile was a lot of misery, sadness, grief, regret, and shame. I just really didn't believe in myself. I spent many days battling depression. I slept when I wasn't working. I discovered pills and alcohol. And through that time, I just gained more weight and learned to cover it up even more with more camouflage and more smiling.
A lot of times when we're on Facebook, we see our friends that aren't necessarily overweight like William is and feeling poorly about themselves. A lot of times they're gorgeous, they look beautiful, they have really wonderful smiles and a family to boot that looks happy, but they're still miserable inside. So always try to have empathy for people because you never quite know what they're dealing with. And I don't think we should look at somebody just because they are skinny, because they are attractive, and just think, oh, their life must be great.
I prayed all the time, but even my prayers were limited by my depression. And the whole time I smiled until something finally broke. That chain that was holding me down finally snapped. And I started to get this hope and started to listen to my own words that I was telling to people and seeing the new day. I began to let people in to help me, to support me. They were there the whole time. And I never really realized that God had blessed me with so many people in my life to help me to live my life. Started going back to the gym, working out. I got stronger and stronger. That perception of being this fat guy started to shift. I got new mentors. I tried new things. I got into boxing and learned to enjoy the journey as I traveled through my life. And I started to actually smile on the inside.
Gosh, guys, this is William Singleton's voice, but this is you. This is me. This is us. This is we. Let's do this, right? You guys have been wanting to lose weight and get back to the best version of you for so long. Let's do it this time. Are you guys with me? If you're with me, let me know down in the comments.
As things started to shift to be something new, something better, I found people that actually believed in me. That was more important than I realized. And that my story, my stories could help other people learn how to be more than just broke and alone and angry. So here I am now, smiling for real. It has been a new revelation for me.
I almost started to cry too. I'm getting a little fired up here. I don't know. William Singleton's got the voice, he's got the gift, right? Go to his channel. I'll make sure I link it in our description. Subscribe to his videos, give him a thumbs up. Guys, I really want to see you guys lose a lot of weight and really hit your dreams. Go get your shoes. Let's go for a walk. I woke up a little bit late, and when I mean a little bit, about 10 or 15 minutes late. I did get a chance to read a quick story, and I thought it was pretty cool, pretty interesting. Guys, about 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of forget now because it all blends together in the fabric of life, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I had a double hernia surgery, and when I had it, I was down for about a month, and it was just incredible how painful that was. Here's the thing, I had Da Vinci robotic surgery. So despite it being painful as all heck, my surgical wounds were literally the size of little Tic Tacs, very, very tiny. As a matter of fact, if I were to show you my surgical wounds, you would not be able to see them. That's how tiny they were. And that's why I went with Da Vinci robotic surgery over laparoscopic or over traditional surgery, because I figured it would give the doctor a three-dimensional view of my area so that he could fix it. And the way they do it is so interesting. They pump you full of this gas that kind of pushes your abdominal wall up, and then they're able to go in there, and the doctor is actually doing the surgery with his hands, but he's using a robot. In other words, he's playing a video game of a surgery while the robot is actually performing the procedure on you. And it was a smashing success. And even though I was in pain over the next month or so, it was one of those things where I was able to heal up pretty quickly. To give you an idea of how impressive this surgery was, guys, I was not even given a single antibiotic after the surgery. Isn't that bizarre? You know, normally you get a bunch of big cuts and stuff. You're so used to the doctor giving you at least a week or two's worth of antibiotics, but in this case, absolutely none. And I'm kind of glad I didn't get any at the time because it wasn't really necessary. Anyway, where the traditional person takes probably, I don't know, a full month or two just to recover, I started recovering after like a couple of days, but the pain did last for quite a while. I was actually able to go through my surgical pains and recovery without using one single pain pill. Now tell me that's not awesome. In a world where a lot of people go through surgery and end up becoming addicted to pain pills, all I needed was a couple of ibuprofen here and a couple of ibuprofen there. And man, I was able to go basically 3.5 weeks later. And it was one of those things where it's like, if you would have told me, hey, you're going to have a major surgery, but your wounds are going to look almost like an alien did it because there are no wounds. And then on top of that, you're not going to need one antibiotic and you're not going to need one pain pill. I would have thought you were crazy. But it's true. So if you're ever contemplating getting a hernia surgery, or somebody you love is, look into the Da Vinci robot surgery and see if you can find a surgeon in your area that specializes in that. So the reason I bring that up is there's a surgeon in China named Dr. Lu Xingquan, and he's from Shanghai. He works at a place called the Chest Hospital, which I assume would be the equivalent of the heart hospital here, right? So using a 5G MedBot for surgery, the doctor was able to conduct surgery from his hospital in Shanghai while the patient was in a place called Kashgar in China, but over 3,000 miles away. They were able to successfully remove lung tumors basically while using these robots. I don't know if they call theirs Da Vinci robots, probably not. But basically he was able to get behind his video game screen while a robot performed and actually did the surgery over 3,000 miles away. Now, why is this so cool? The reason it's so cool is because surgeons have always been able to perform surgeries where they are in the richer countries. But in our super duper poorer countries, a lot of times they have needs for these operations. But guys, it's just impossible for them to get surgeons out in those areas. And because they're poorer, it's not like surgeons want to go live in those areas. So these robots and these abilities to use 5G networks and stuff enable them to do these surgeries in rural, poorer areas that could be thousands of miles away. And the idea that we can do these successfully is just amazing. It means that even in the poorer rural areas, there's a potential shard of hope going forward that we can perform more surgeries via this route. So the richer countries can actually help the poorer countries without having to relocate there. And I find that amazing. What do you guys think of that? Could you imagine if you were having a surgery and your surgeon was actually hundreds, maybe even thousands of miles away? That is amazing. I just find it amazing what we can do. So where your surgeon has to rely on his hands, these robotic machines are able to do perfect cuts with minimal damage to the area, to the tissue. And that is just a miracle of sorts. So again, if I were to show you my wounds, the only thing I have left over from my double hernia surgery is I feel like I have this like extra pooch area where my stomach used to be incredibly flat. Now it kind of pooches out on me and stuff. Kind of what women talk about after they give birth, how now their body no longer kind of feels like it's the same body to them. That's kind of how I feel about my stomach area. Now, one of the things that I learned over this past 145 days or so walking with you guys is that even when it comes to a pooch, you can still minimalize it by getting off the sugar, walking every day, and drinking a lot of water. So can you improve it? Yes. Will it ever get back to the point where your body felt like it did before surgery or before childbirth? That's a whole other question that's probably going to be answered with a negative. But at the same time, through baby steps, we can still try to make things better. So let me tell you what my goal is. When I go to Planet Fitness, I try to do these trunk twists. I try to get in a certain machine where I'm up like so, and I lift my knees up to my stomach. I also try to do extra walking on the treadmill. So this isn't one of those things where I'm just gonna throw my hands up in the air and quit. I'm just gonna continuously try to work on the muscles in the area. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to tell you that I made a breakthrough and that my stomach looks the same way it did as, when I was in my 20s and 30s. But if that day never comes, what do? We just kind of have to get over those things. On another note, I always kind of viewed August as being a part of fall. As crazy as it sounds, even though I'm nearly 48 years old, I always saw August as part of fall. But last night, I actually asked ChatGPT, is August technically part of summer or part of fall? It's part of summer. Now, the reason I always thought it was part of fall is because usually in August, that's when the kids start going back to school. So naturally, I just kind of equated going back to school with the fall. So technically, these kids that are going back to school in the early to mid part of August, which they are in certain parts of the country, God, those kids are getting cheated out of a last month of summer. It's supposed to be a summer break, and then you go back to school in the fall. Maybe we ought to up it where every single person in the country just goes to school from September. Maybe we start them right after Labor Day and let them go. I always thought it was weird that some schools, in the US start a full 3 or 4 weeks before some other schools do. Why is that? It's not that big of a deal, right? If somebody in another state is learning something a month before you do. But I remember in high school, I didn't realize how bad our education system was in Arizona. Because when you're going through school and you're getting good grades, you just assume you're ahead of the curve. And every time we would do like ITBS tests, which were, I believe it stood for the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, I would always get good scores, and so would a lot of my classmates. So we were constantly being flooded with this idea that we were in like the top 5 or top percentile of students in the country. But it had to be complete fallacy, because I remember in high school I started meeting friends that had gone to school in other states. And I'll never forget, one time I was talking to this one guy, completely forget his name, but he was telling me that he was learning stuff in 8th grade that he was now being regurgitated and taught again in 10th grade here. So 8th grade in Colorado, where he had come from, he was learning math and certain subjects that now as a 10th grader, he was being taught again down here in Arizona. And I just thought, what a sham. You're telling me that we're actually learning stuff way behind other states? And yeah, come to find out that back then, we had this situation where, other than Mississippi, we were like 49th when it came to education. We were also 49th, once again, behind Mississippi when it came to childbirth. So I saw these situations where, while I was in high school, we would have about a half a dozen or so girls that all of a sudden wouldn't be around, and you come to find out that they were pregnant and having their babies, And I always thought it was interesting. So I grew up in a world where we were constantly having teenagers that were still in high school, and all of a sudden they were getting pregnant and starting families, or at least having children, while they were still very much children themselves. So imagine growing up in a world where you think that you and your academic achievements are above average, and then you get smacked with reality when you enter the world to find out that all the things you learned were not above average. They weren't even at par with the other students around the country. You were learning stuff that was below them. That was very humiliating and embarrassing. I'll never forget, from that point on, from my sophomore year, talking with my friend about this, for the rest of my days, I was really like a little upset with the fact that while we were younger in grade school, they could have been teaching us more and more stuff so we would be better prepared for high school and ultimately college. But you know what we did in Arizona? We learned based on the slowest kid in the class. So I want you guys to remind yourself and remember, back to 2nd and 3rd grade, you guys would be reading a book as a class, remember, with your homeroom teacher? And you would read a paragraph, and then your next door, and then your neighbor who sat next to you would read a paragraph of the story. And if you guys remember, you would get to Joey and Debbie. When Joey read, it was like, you know, he would read a sentence and it would take him 30 seconds to pronounce every syllable of that sentence. And then you finally finish Joey's paragraph. It goes to Debbie. She's just like Joey. She can barely read. And that's how we learned in Arizona. We learned based on how fast the slowest kid in class was. Now you might say, well, Jesse, you know, by doing that, you find out who belongs in the AP classes and who belongs in this, that, and the other. Well, the AP classes, if you've ever taken any, are twice as hard as regular average Joe Schmo classes. Because with AP classes, sometimes you're getting college credits, right? And oh, by the way, your boy didn't take a bunch of AP classes by any means, but I had friends that did. Little did I know that those AP classes probably set them up for success at that next level. You have to learn to challenge yourself when your brain is able to take on those challenges. I think we've all heard the old saying that you can't teach old dogs new tricks. That's how I feel when it comes to certain subjects in school, especially mathematical subjects. I think it's best to get math taught to kids at a younger age. And just to know that in Arizona, at least back in the 80s and 90s, we were teaching classrooms based on the slowest person in the class. That's a shitty way to teach kids how to read and write and arithmetic. Would you want to learn based on the kid that's struggling and at his or her speed? Now, I know some people out there are saying, well, you know, this is the problem with schools. We can't leave these kids behind. I think the thing would be to isolate them, get them in with other kids that are having troubles with these subjects, and elevate them to a level of sufficiency. Instead, we just dumbed down the whole class so everybody could, you know, hopefully graduate that 3rd grade and go into 4th grade or whatever the case might be. So looking back, your education is so important. And I was under the impression, because I got basically straight A's, that I was doing something special and learning something profound in life. That wasn't the case at all. We were 2 years behind Colorado. And when I think of bastions of educational prowess, I don't even think of the state of Colorado. I think of states like Massachusetts, you know, and places in the Northeast where they have Ivy League schools. God, they were setting us up for a situation where none of us would go to Ivy League schools. As a matter of fact, I think our high school valedictorian went to an Ivy League school. But I think other than him, I don't think any of us did anything special. I mean, I could be wrong on that. I'm sure people did special things. But when it came to education, when you find out that your state is ranked 49th in a country of 50 states, that is hella disappointing. And here's the thing. We had the type of neighborhoods in Arizona back in the 80s and 90s. I don't see any reason why we had to be so low on the academic ladder. Like, seriously, think about this. In the 80s and 90s, Arizona had very low crime rate compared to some places around the country. Why weren't we able to get our students ahead of the curve? We were way behind. And it just makes you wonder, how the hell bad was Mississippi? So what would I do nowadays? Because nowadays it is a little different with things like the internet and YouTube and a lot of courses that are available, like through Coursera, and Google has these certificate programs. I think if I were going to go back to my high school days, I think there would be some subjects. I mean, I'd like to think that I would try harder, But you know how it is with young people. A lot of times we take the easiest route. So there is a chance that even with all of today's knowledge and technology that one can learn by themselves online, I probably wouldn't have done anything different. So maybe I'm barking for absolutely no reason, but I'd like to think that if everything was the same as it is today, I'd like to think that I would have gotten out of high school a lot more than what I got out of high school. I went to a community college at Glendale Community College here in Glendale, Arizona. And I also went to community college in Paradise Valley here in Arizona. And in both cases, I had the same situation. I wasn't used to kind of doing my own thing at my own pace. I didn't realize how important it was that in junior high and high school that I had teachers that were pushing me forward to success. Because when I was in college, I quickly realized, and many of you might have realized this too, that there's not necessarily a teacher over your shoulder, showing you how to do things and how to get things done. It's kind of on you at that point. You're considered an adult. That's considered adult education. And they're assuming since you're paying for it, that you're there to learn. And so what happened to me was all of a sudden, and this is part of my life story too, so I figure I'll share it with you venters. All of a sudden, I was 19 years old. I'm in a college class, and all of a sudden, I quickly learned from my girlfriend / fiance at the time that she no longer wants to be with me, and that she doesn't necessarily want to be a mom. And so all of a sudden, I'm told that unless you want to give up your daughter for adoption, you need to come and get her and take care of her. So imagine one day you're in college, you've got a fiance, you've got your daughter, things are looking really positive and on the up. And then all of a sudden, you're quitting school to literally be a single parent dad. And that's what I did for 2 or 3 months. So it wasn't like I could get right back into school. Now fast forward 2 or 3 months. All of a sudden, I'm in a situation where things kind of get back to normal. My daughter is kind of back with her mom. Her mom kind of got over this. Let's give her up for adoption, which, by the way, if you give your child up for adoption right from the get-go, that's one thing. But how are you going to give up a child that's been in your arms for 6, 7, 8 months or however long it was? It wasn't an option to me. So all of a sudden, this family that I have growing and this college life that I'm doing, all of a sudden it was stopped just like that. And your boy just feels like from that point on, from the age of 19 on, there was just chaos in my life. Because, I was living in my own apartment. It was just darn near impossible, the idea of having this little toddler, my daughter, and then in addition to that, going to school every day. It was just impossible. So whenever you see young women and they're single parents and they're somehow, some way able to go to school and get a degree and stuff, God, they are champions in my mind, because I know how challenging that is, because that challenge was dropped at my doorstep. Now I am so proud of myself that even as an 18 and 19-year-old kid, I knew in my heart, don't give up your daughter. Keep your daughter. It's going to be so worth it. And you want to know something? My daughter ended up graduating from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism from Arizona State University. She's now somewhat of a local celebrity, working for the Arizona Republic. She's been on television a handful of times. She actually was a debate monitor, I think they're called, moderator, for when the city of Glendale was suing the Coyotes, because the Coyotes, and what I mean by the Coyotes is the Arizona hockey team, because they were trying to set it up where the hockey team's stadium would get paid for by government money and stuff. And so she did a debate on TV, and she's basically been on TV a handful of times. Now there's a piece of me when I watch my daughter doing these things, and I'm very super proud. You can't imagine how proud I am of my daughter. But there's a piece of me that when I see these things, I think, my goodness, if her mother wouldn't have cheated me out of my college situation, there's no reason in the world why that couldn't have been me working for the Arizona Republic or working at the newspaper or the TV station, right? There's no reason why that couldn't have been me. But you want to know something? I think everything happens for a reason. And if I would have been that successful person, who knows? Maybe my daughter would have been the one to grow up, with a teenage pregnancy in a situation where things were bad. But my daughter's one of the few people that she married her husband about 6 or 7 years ago. And then 2 or 3 years into her marriage, she gave birth to my granddaughter, Dagny. So now my granddaughter is going to be 3 years old soon, right? But she did things the right way. When I was younger, we got girls pregnant, and then we thought about things like marriage. So it's like I'm kind of glad things turned out the way they did. Instead of going and getting a college degree and going the route of maybe becoming a school teacher or a journalist or whatever thoughts were going on in my head at the time, my future was rerouted into one of sales. Now, sales are one of those things that if you can start selling the right product or the right services, you can do really well in life. So I don't have any complaints on that front, but there is a piece of me that when I meet friends that have a doctorate, they have a master's, they have a bachelor's, or heck, even if they have an associate's, guys, there's a piece of me that's a little jealous of that. Now, one of the things I want to do, good morning, how are you?
Good, thanks, how are you?
Good, thank you. There's LeBeau. So one of the things that I would like to do kind of as a crazy goal in life is if I were to ever win the lottery or save up a ton of money where I could retire early, I always envisioned myself as being one of these 50-year-olds that actually went back to college, went and got their degree. Maybe even one of these people that when I'm in my mid-50s, maybe becomes a school teacher or something like that,
Because when I look at where I've come from and how far I've come, it just renews my belief that I can go as far as I want to go. And so can you, so can we, but all it takes is for us to just really overcome that first obstacle, that first wall, that first block that you have. Once you break that, like I broke it with my weight. Once I lost the 100 pounds that I never thought I could lose, something opened up in me to where I just realized I could do anything.
Thank you, William. We can do anything, Venters. I'll see you tomorrow.